What are with these straight what is this, a General Lee? Bone Luke Duke sliding across the front? Welcome back to the channel, good friends. Brian from Apex Detail. Before I get started on this paint correction, I wanted to share a few common mistakes. The top 10 mistakes I believe if you avoid them, you will have a nice, easy day and enjoy the results. This will be valid for the driveway detailer, the beginner, the enthusiast, all the way up to the professional and in between. And we will revert to the whiteboard or the eraser board over here. I do have props set up with some visuals that will also aid at what I'm trying to get across. I hate wasting your time. Let's get into the video. All right, we're gonna run through these common mistakes. They are in no particular order. Research, too aggressive, no test areas. Speed too high for the polisher. Technique, heat, heat, heat. Ego, keep the polisher moving, clean the pads. Paint prep too soon, lighting, and I will have a bonus for you as well. Let's get started with this first one, research. What do I mean by that? Starting with research. If it's going to be a vehicle that I have that I just brought in from an auction, or it's going to be a customer's car that just pulled onto the lot, we're going to get it in and work on it. I'm doing research on the finish, and it doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter how familiar I am with it. I'm still going to do some research. Why? Paint comes, the finish of paint and clear coat comes in all different types of shapes, forms, and hardness. And we have some from very soft, butter soft, that will scratch if you sneeze in its general direction, all the way up to stubborn hard. And the reason you want to do research, and you can do something as simple as Googling a car you're working on, is because I found halfway through the year, a manufacturer could have outsourced their clear coat, and it could have went from very soft to moderate, and maybe even hard and stubborn, or what's worse is the other way around, and you're not expecting it. So if you do a little bit of research, if you don't find it on a site from the manufacturer, 9 times out of 10 you'll find it on a forum. And how accurate that is, who's to say, but you can take that into consideration and then start doing your test areas with that in mind. So research is huge. We're always studying on the materials that we're working on here at the shop. Doesn't matter if it's painted finish, plastic, trim, any type of material. You want to know absolutely everything about it. Checked off the list. Number 2, too aggressive, way too aggressive, without test areas. What do I mean by that? Let's get over to a test panel and I'll explain. Starting off, way too aggressive would be a huge mistake. So test areas. And what are test areas? You're going to pick, and I'm going to show 2 areas on a vehicle that I love to start and do test areas and figure out the best combination, polisher, pad, and correction fluid to get the job done without being too over aggressive and taking too much clear off. I like to do a couple areas on the hood if I see that the hood is really scratched up from improper washes, laying cardboard or their briefcase or whatever they have from work on the hood or the trunk and sliding it off. Another area that is a great area for tests is going to be this area right here on the vehicle. The door, the quarter panel, the outermost areas that if somebody goes through a car wash, these are going to be swirled and scratched up the most. So those are 2 great areas to do test areas. And I say no less than 3 test areas with different combinations to find the least aggressive team to get the work done. I know quite a few that follow the channel regularly know what this is. This is a material that is 2 mils thick. And I'm not sure if the camera can focus in on this enough so you can understand how thin this is, but this represents a layer of clear coat, and it's thinner than a fraction of the thickness of a Post-it. When you have an area that thin, you want to be as respectful, careful. You want to preserve it as much as possible because it is the only thing protecting the gorgeous color coat underneath, whether it's a flat or a metallic or a matte or a satin finish. It is protected from the sun's harmful rays and chemicals by this thin layer. Getting too aggressive removes way too much for the job at hand most times, and that's why test areas will help figure out the combination that will get the job done with the least amount of aggression. Guys, if you don't have one of these, get yourself one. We have quite a few here. This happens to be the cheapest, and it may not be the most accurate, but guys, it turns out to be one of the most consistent tools. And if you have something consistent, you eventually, time and time again, using it, know how to utilize it and take advantage of the information it gives you. Take readings all the way around. You wouldn't get anything on this because this is all carbon fiber. Corvette's all fiberglass. But when you have something that is metal and can measure the thickness, that gives you an idea of how much you have to work with. And then if you're doing your test areas, that all accumulates into safe paint correction. Get that one off the list. We're moving down. Number 3, speed of the polisher is just way too high. Let me explain why that is very important. Okay, when it comes to speed of the polisher, and I'm going to throw some other bonus tidbits in here as well, since we're over here on the test panel. We have a polisher, we have a pad, and we have the fluid. But when it comes to the polisher speed, we're going to start off on the first speed setting, and that is to spread the product out. And once you have your product spread out, we're going to slide up to between the 3rd and the 4th speed setting. And that's what that sounds like. It's not screaming, it's not, you know, you're not getting a ton of vibration. The polishers seem to be at their smoothest at that speed, but more importantly, you're letting the pad get the job done without it being too aggressive and too fast and spiking temperatures. We're going to get into heat and how heat is detrimental to clear coat or single stage. But between the 3rd and the 4th speed setting, that is the sweet spot for most polishers, giving it enough time to do the correction fluid and the polisher time to do its work, but not crazy fast, spiking temperatures, and just getting way out of control. And while we're on subject of control, I also want to show you with most of the correction fluids out there, I've heard 3 pea-sized drops. I like more on what's closer to marble-sized drops or grape-sized drops. And it seems to be the perfect, you don't want too much product on your pad where it pushes the pad away from the surface or it floats, because the pad is doing more work than anything else when it comes to paint correction. The pad is the most important part of the paint correction. The correction fluid just helps in, it aids and is a good teammate to the pad, adding a little bit of abrasive and also just enough lubrication that you can glide across the panel. So again, down to the 1st speed setting, tap out your product, turn it on to the 1st speed setting to spread it out. Bump it up to the 3rd speed setting, between the 3rd and 4th, whatever you're comfortable with, to do the correction. And what I like to do is a crisscross pattern, which is equal to 2 passes, left to right, then up and down, and then I like to wipe off the residue to get a good look at the section and see what those passes have done, what type of improvement we're getting from the combination or the team of the polisher pad and correction fluid. All right, we have speed checked off the list. We're moving down to technique. This is going to be a quick, simple, easy segment of this video. Let's get to it. Technique. If you've been a long-time subscriber and watched the videos, one thing you're going to see is consistency with the way I polish. Doesn't matter if it's on a test panel or a car. And that's going to be methodical slow, deliberate movements under control with the polisher. You're not going to see me thrashing about. I'm not going to be doing a mow down method. I want to know that I'm getting a cut or a level from this side of the panel to that side of the panel that is even and consistent. And that's why I use that method with the polisher under control, the speed where it's at, pressure. Pressure is going to equal a firm handshake. It's the only way I can describe it into words, how much pressure I'm putting down. It's just going to be enough that it gives the pad and the polisher enough energy or force to get work done, but not too much where you're getting over aggressive and then also spiking temperatures once again. I hope that makes sense. Check off technique. And if you want to know about technique, again, just watch all of my paint correction videos. It's the same technique every time. The next category, heat, should have been number one, because it's one of the most important parts of correcting or polishing your car you need to know about. The technique that I just showed you is not only important in giving me information that I'm getting an even cut, but it also controls temperature, every single aspect, with the speed of the polisher, the pressure, and also movement, keeping it moving, and then also doing a crisscross pattern, which is equal to 2 passes, and then stop and a wiping it down. That gives me a chance to let the panel cool down. You want to have the area you're working on be within 20 degrees of the ambient temperature of the rest of the panel. I hope that makes sense. Let's go over to the whiteboard and I'll show you what happens to the area being corrected compared to its surrounding areas. Okay, this will represent the primer layer. This will represent the color coat layer. So primer, color coat, clear coat layer. This is if you're looking at the panel from the side and everything is the exact same temperature all the way across. Once you start working and polishing an area, it's going to swell. So the clear coat layer will swell. Color coat layer swell a little bit less. Primer coat layer will swell a little bit, but even less. And the reason is because of the heat. Ambient temperature, 72 to 75 degrees. This can spike up to 120, 150, and higher. And it will cause those areas to swell where the rest of the panel is just at its natural state. That is a lot of stress and pressure on the clear coat, the color coat layer, and even the primer layer, which are, by the way, all made of different materials and will swell in different ways and expand in different ways because they are different materials. Something to keep in mind, and something that can cause failure if it's repeated and done improperly and is drastic. On the test panel, I'm going to now show you how quickly you can spike temperatures just by polishing in a narrow area. And what we're looking at is a meter that shows you the coolest to the hottest point, which is between 78 and 84 degrees on this panel. And when I polish, that's going to change drastically. You're going to see it go from blue to yellow to orange to red, and this will show the coolest area and the hottest spiked in temperature little strip or area on the test panel. And we'll do that right here. All right, now let's come back in and take a look. And look how hot that got. We now have a maximum temperature right here of 120, dropping now back down to 118. So that will give you an idea how quick you can spike temperatures. Really hot there. Outside here, it's about 40 degrees cooler. That is one hell of a lot of stress. Okay, let's get this one out of the way. Very, very important. Should be number one. The next one's going to be very important as well, and that is ego. Guys, when I first got into the business, which was long ago, I did let my ego get the best of me. And that meant no matter what the package was, no matter what the customer was requesting or had the eye for, I, because of my ego, had to go for perfection. Not only was that bad for the clear coat itself, it was bad for my business, it was bad for myself, and bad for the car, and bad for the customer. When you have packages laid out on your website, or you have an idea what you want to do to your vehicle, expectations are going to be key. Expectations on a clear coat that is now water-based instead of solvent-based like it was years ago. So it's going to be a lot less of it, it's going to be thinner, it's going to be softer. I advise doing no more than a single stage or an enhancement on some of these newer paint systems. A multi-step correction is going to be too much. It's going to remove too much, and there's no need for it. If you're getting that type of scratches on it, unless it was sold to a person that is more mindful of that, they're going to go back on it, and you're not going to have enough to correct the next time in case there's a problem. Ego can be a terrible thing. It was a hard habit to shake. We now do mostly paint enhancements and one-steps. Very rarely, maybe last year, I think we did 2 multi-step corrections where we really dug deep into the clear. And we also, as a business, had the customer sign off on that, letting them know that this was serious and it's something that should not be done often and should only be done once. It's once and done with a multi-step. So I hope that helps. Check your ego at the door. As a business, if you're chasing after perfection and you only sold an enhancement or a one-step, you're really digging into the overhead. I mean, you're pushing the time of a package way out further than the way it should be. If you're doing this on your own, you could also be making the same mistakes with your ego, cutting too deep into the clear, which you'll pay for that later with oxidation and maybe failure. And you won't have enough to correct the next time a boo-boo happens in that area, which it will. And it's something to avoid. Check the ego at the door. There goes the ego. Keep polisher moving. Now, this one kind of is in the same category as your technique, but let's quick go over that because that's also important. Keep that polisher moving. Not only is it important to control the temperature and keep it from spiking, but it also will keep you out of trouble. It'll keep you out of trouble on peaks of body lines, on edges of panels, because if you're keeping that polisher moving, you're keeping it cooler, and you cut the risk of polishing through these areas. If you're going back and forth, it doesn't even have to be on a peak or a body line. You could be on a flat area. If you keep going back and forth and concentrating on one little scratch or one little imperfection, that can get you in trouble. And hovering over an area is also a no-no. That will spike the temperature and cut deep quickly. So keep that polisher moving. If you keep it moving, it'll give you a chance to look down where the polisher was and see what improvements you've made and if you need to go any further. If you don't, keep moving. If you do burn through, there's only one way to correct the problem. You're always going to see it. You're going to see where you burn through. There will be a ring or an area where it looks a different shade or it just looks completely different. You'll have to sand down the panel and respray. So avoid that mistake. Check. Next one on the list, clean pads. Very, very important. Keeping pads very clean is also very important. I like to clean the pads between every pass. At the very least, clean them between every panel. If they get clogged, they're not effective. The time you take to clean them may seem a little excessive, but that keeps the pads the most effective, and you'll get the job done quicker. And there are 3 ways that you can go about doing that is effective, and that's by using and having the pad washer 28,000 or whatever it's called. Or you can use forced air. I am going to admit forced air isn't the easiest on a pad, especially a foam pad with closed cells, because it can rupture the cells. It can really do damage to some pads and cause a little bit of premature wear and tear or failure. Another thing you can do is, at the very least, spray a pad cleaner on there, agitate the bristles or the foam or the microfiber or the wool, and go from there. Wipe it dry with a microfiber, get back to polishing. So keep those pads clean. Clean the pads, moving on to left. The next one is also important. Paint prep too soon. Panel prep. The 2 most popular forms of panel prep are going to be an isopropyl alcohol-based or solvent-based. So if you just finish correcting an area, a lot of the tendency or habit is to come in here, wipe off the residue, and while it's still hot and swell, paint is swelled, the pores are open. Do not hit it right away with that prep. Finish your correction, move on to another panel, or walk away, grab a soda or a glass of water or the beverage of your liking and relax and let that cool down. Then you can come in and hit it with the panel prep. Work the area, check your work, and if you need to go over it, go over it. But once, especially a solvent-based gets into swollen paint and the pores that are open, it can take days, even weeks, for that solvent to evaporate from the pores of the finish, either single stage or clear coat. It's a little bit less time for an isopropyl alcohol mix, but still can keep painted surfaces, clear coat, single stage, swelled up. You want to stay away from that habit. Wait till it cools down, then do your panel prep and check your work. Let's jump to the last section here, lighting. Yes, the hex lights, very cool for pictures, cool for videos, not bad for washing, not bad for coating, not bad for putting PPF on a car. For paint correction, they absolutely suck and are very distracting. I like linear lighting, and I like one source of lighting from about a 45-degree angle. So if I'm working on this vehicle, I will put that light right there on an angle, and I'll turn the rest of them off. So it's actually darkroom correcting with just one source of light at the perfect angle. Seeing your imperfections, seeing them clearly is going to be a quick and easy way to catch imperfections and remove them. Something distracting like that is not for me, maybe for you. It is subjective, but linear lighting on an angle, darkroom lighting, so one source, in other words, is something to be mindful of. Let me know down in the comment section how you like to light your workspace when paint correcting. How about a bonus before we end the video? Discipline, which kind of runs hand in hand with patience. We often get pressured, if you're doing this for business, into having to jump into the next job and starting to rush. Discipline in technique and patience, just being methodical in everything you do, and don't get pressured into rushing. When you rush, you run into problems, you run into mistakes. It can affect the results, and all I can tell you there is just keep your cool, stay disciplined, and be methodical, and you'll be happy with the results every time. If you have any questions, guys, never hesitate to reach out, especially down in the comment section. I go through all the comments eventually. I may not be able to answer every single one on every single video, but I do my best. This has been Brian from Apex Detail. I hope the video helps, and I'll catch you in the next one. My gosh.